The first sign that something was wrong was that Earth welcomed us, not with weapons, not with threats, not with the suspicious silence every sensible species expected from a death world. Earth welcomed us with repair crews. Our vessel, the Far Horizon, had crossed 3 sectors carrying diplomatic cargo and scientific archives when a gravitic storm tore through our drive systems. The damage should have ended our journey. Half the propulsion grid was fused into useless metal, long-range communications were failing. Life support reserves were shrinking faster than our engineers could stabilize them. In civilized space, a crippled ship that far from major trade routes usually became a drifting tomb. Then our sensors found Earth. Every academy in the Galactic Union taught the same lessons about the planet: high gravity, dangerous weather, predators large enough to hunt armored creatures, tectonic instability, oceans capable of swallowing cities, diseases, extreme temperatures, a death world, the kind of place intelligent life was never supposed to dominate. Yet somehow humans had not only survived there. They had thrived. Most species considered them a curiosity. Some considered them reckless. A few considered them frightening. None of us expected them to become important. "We only need repairs," our captain said during the emergency council meeting. "A few replacement components and enough fuel to reach Union territory." The statement seemed reasonable. At the time, the transmission we sent was simple and direct: distressed civilian vessel requesting emergency assistance. The answer arrived less than 4 minutes later. "Earth traffic control responding. Welcome. Send your damage reports." Help is already on the way. Help is already on the way. Those words confused everyone on the bridge. No negotiations, no demands, no discussions about payment. Just help. Within hours, human ships appeared around us. They were not warships. They were tugs, rescue vessels, engineering craft, and supply transports. Hundreds of humans boarded our damaged vessel. They moved with startling speed. Deathworlders always did. Their bodies seemed built for impossible workloads. They carried equipment heavier than many species could lift. They crawled through maintenance shafts barely wider than their shoulders. They worked through entire cycles with little rest while joking with one another. Our engineers watched in disbelief. Human technicians examined systems that should have required weeks of study. Then they began fixing them, not slowly, not cautiously, quickly, confidently, as if repairing damaged starships was a pleasant hobby. One human engineer emerged from a reactor compartment covered in grease and smiling. "You folks have been running this thing at 70% efficiency." Our chief engineer stared. "That is the manufacturer specification." The human blinked. "Well, it shouldn't be." The next day, the reactor was producing nearly double its previous output. Nobody could explain how. The upgrades continued. Every repair somehow became an improvement. Damaged sensors became superior sensors. Worn armor became reinforced armor. Obsolete navigation systems became advanced predictive systems capable of tracking hazards days in advance. We repeatedly informed them that upgrades were unnecessary. Humans repeatedly ignored us. "It was easier this way," they kept saying. The phrase became infamous aboard the Far Horizon. One evening, I stood inside the engineering deck watching human workers replace entire power conduits. "We cannot afford all this," I told one of them. The human laughed. "You helped map the outer expanse routes, right?" I nodded. "My family uses those routes?" Consider this a thank you. That answer somehow disturbed me more than a demand for payment. In the wider galaxy, generosity was rare. Humans treated it like routine maintenance. As repairs continued, stranger things began appearing around Earth orbit. Massive shipyards worked without pause. Freighters delivered mountains of metal and machinery. Orbital construction platforms assembled vessels at a pace our databases claimed was impossible. Thousands of ships, then tens of thousands. The scale made no sense. Officially, Earth was not at war. Officially, humans were focusing on trade and exploration. Officially, nothing unusual was happening. Yet, every sensor report suggested otherwise. One night, our long-range arrays intercepted encrypted emergency traffic from beyond Union space. Fragments only. Broken signals. Distress calls, reports of entire colonies disappearing. Border fleets destroyed. Unknown attackers advancing through multiple sectors. The messages vanished almost as quickly as they appeared. Human authorities never discussed them. But the construction yards accelerated. More ships. More weapons. More activity. The atmosphere around Earth changed. The smiles remained. The kindness remained. But beneath it all, something else was growing. Preparation. Then 3 days before our scheduled departure, a priority alert echoed across every deck of the far horizon. The bridge summoned all senior personnel immediately. When we arrived, the captain was staring at the main display. Earth Command had transmitted a classified message intended for every human military installation in the system. A message that had somehow reached our receivers. The room fell silent as the translated text appeared. Unknown hostile fleet confirmed. Estimated arrival, 12 days, full mobilization authorized. And below that message was something even more terrifying. A deployment order, not for a few defensive ships, not for a planetary defense force, for a battle fleet so enormous that it outnumbered the combined military strength of entire regions of known space. Then another transmission arrived. This one addressed directly to us. The captain opened it with trembling hands. A human voice spoke calmly. "Your repairs are complete. Your upgrades are installed. We recommend delaying departure." The voice paused. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "You may be safer staying with the fleet." The silence that followed the transmission felt heavier than any gravity field. Nobody on the bridge spoke. The message remained frozen on the display while every officer stared at it. "You may be safer staying with the fleet." The statement made no sense. Earth was a death world. Dangerous, unpredictable, and isolated compared to the great powers of the Galactic Union. By every accepted standard of galactic strategy, remaining near a threatened frontier system should have been the worst possible choice. Yet not a single human sounded worried. That frightened me more than the warning itself. Over the next several days, our repaired vessel remained docked above Earth while the human mobilization continued. Officially, we were waiting for final inspections. Unofficially, our captain wanted answers. We were not the only curious visitors. Ships from dozens of species filled the outer orbital zones. Traders, researchers, diplomats, and explorers watched the growing human fleet with increasing concern. Rumors spread through every communications channel. Some claimed a forgotten empire had returned from deep space. Others whispered about machine civilizations beyond the mapped regions. A few believed entire star systems were simply disappearing. Nobody knew the truth. The humans kept building. What surprised us most was how ordinary Earth seemed despite the approaching threat. From orbit, the planet looked alive. Massive cities glittered across continents. Aircraft crossed crowded skies. Ships moved across oceans large enough to swallow most inhabited worlds. People continued living their lives. Children attended schools. Families gathered in parks. Markets remained open. Humanity prepared for war while somehow refusing to stop being human. Our science officers spent days studying the planet below. The reports became increasingly unbelievable. Earth's weather alone would have classified many worlds as unsuitable for settlement. Violent storms crossed entire oceans. Lightning strikes numbered in the millions every day. Some regions experienced temperatures capable of freezing exposed flesh within minutes. Others were hot enough to kill most known species. Earthquakes regularly reshaped landscapes. Volcanoes erupted without warning. Even the oceans were dangerous. Predators larger than transport vehicles hunted beneath the waves. How did intelligent life evolve here? One of our engineers asked. Nobody had an answer. Human records only deepened the mystery. Again and again, we found examples of survival that should have been impossible. Entire communities rebuilding after natural disasters. Explorers crossing frozen wastelands. Rescue teams entering environments most species would immediately evacuate. Human history seemed less like a civilization story and more like a long argument against surrender. The realization unsettled many aboard the far horizon. Most galactic societies had evolved on relatively stable worlds. Safety came first. Risk was minimized. Humans appeared to have learned the opposite lesson. Danger was expected, adaptation was normal, failure was merely temporary. One afternoon, I accompanied a group of officers to a human naval facility located near a rugged coastline. Towering waves crashed against black cliffs. Strong winds shook the observation platforms. The conditions were uncomfortable even inside environmental suits. Humans walked through it casually. Some were exercising outdoors. Others were performing maintenance on aircraft. A few sat near the cliff edge, simply watching the ocean. "You train here?" our captain asked. A human commander nodded. "Good place to learn." "Learn what?" the human smiled. "How not to panic when conditions get bad." The answer lingered in my thoughts long after we left. Perhaps that was the secret. Not superior technology, not unusual intelligence, not physical strength. Humans simply refused to panic. As reports from deep space continued arriving, that trait became increasingly important. Several encrypted messages leaked through civilian networks despite military attempts to contain them. Entire defensive fleets had vanished. Trade corridors were collapsing. Refugee traffic was increasing across multiple sectors. Whatever was coming had already defeated forces far larger than Earth's, yet human shipyards continued operating around the clock. New vessels launched every hour. Massive carriers joined defensive formations. Destroyers, cruisers, escorts, and supply ships assembled into enormous task groups. The battle fleet grew larger every day. Then another strange discovery emerged. Humanity was not merely preparing its own forces. They were helping everyone else. Repair docks opened to foreign vessels. Supply shipments were distributed across neighboring systems. Human engineers worked alongside alien crews without hesitation. Several stranded merchant fleets received upgrades similar to ours. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Where most civilizations fortified themselves, humans strengthened everyone around them. It was either incredible generosity or part of a strategy none of us understood. Then came the signal. A long-range detection platform stationed beyond the edge of the system transmitted a priority alert. One unidentified object had entered sensor range. Then 5. Then 20. Then hundreds. The information spread through orbit within minutes. Every civilian channel erupted into panic. The unknown fleet was arriving earlier than predicted. Human warships immediately shifted formations. Defensive lines activated across the system. Weapons platforms powered online. Fighter wings launched from carriers. For the first time since our arrival, the atmosphere changed. The smiles remained. The calm remained, but now there was focus behind it. The kind of focus predators showed before a storm. Our bridge crew gathered around the sensor display as new contact markers appeared at the edge of known space. Hundreds became thousands. Thousands continued growing. Nobody knew what the approaching vessels were. Nobody knew what they wanted. And as the contact count climbed higher and higher, another transmission arrived from Earth Command. This time it was directed to every ship in the system. The message contained only 6 words: "Stand by. Humanity has a plan." And somehow that was even more terrifying than the enemy fleet. The words spread across the system faster than any official order. Humanity has a plan. For many species, the statement provided little comfort. Plans failed. Predictions failed. Fleets failed. The growing wall of unknown contacts on our sensors was proof of that. Yet among the humans, the reaction was different. Nobody celebrated. Nobody panicked. They simply got to work. From the bridge of the far horizon, I watched thousands of human vessels shift into new positions. Massive formations stretched across millions of kilometers. Supply ships moved toward forward staging zones. Repair vessels dispersed among the fleet. Communications traffic surged as commands flowed through every layer of the defensive network. The sheer organization was remarkable. What surprised me even more was who had joined them. Alien ships, hundreds of them. Merchant captains, explorers, independent traders, and stranded civilian crews who had benefited from human assistance now found themselves facing a difficult choice: leave while there was still time, or stay. Many stayed, not because they believed they could win, because they believed humanity would not abandon them. That trust confused many observers, especially those from the major powers. One Union diplomatic vessel transmitted repeated warnings advising all civilian ships to evacuate immediately. Their recommendation was logical. No civilian belonged near a potential battle zone. The response from a cargo captain orbiting Earth became famous almost instantly. The humans fixed my engines when nobody else answered my distress call. If they are standing here, so am I. Thousands heard the message. Thousands remembered it. Meanwhile, scientists across the system focused on the approaching threat. New sensor data arrived every hour. The unknown fleet behaved strangely. Their ships maintained perfect formation. No communications could be detected. No energy signatures matched known technology. Even their movement patterns appeared unnatural. One research team suggested the vessels might be automated. Another argued they represented an entirely unknown civilization. No theory explained everything, the mystery only deepened. As tension increased in orbit, life continued on Earth below. Our captain authorized a small observation team to study human disaster response infrastructure. The mission was intended to understand how a death world species handled emergencies. The results left everyone stunned. The region we visited had recently suffered severe storms. Entire sections of coastline had been damaged. Roads required repairs. Several communities were still recovering. Yet everywhere we looked, humans were rebuilding. Construction crews worked through heavy rain. Volunteers delivered supplies. Emergency shelters remained active despite worsening weather. Most species would consider such conditions unacceptable. Humans treated them as another challenge. One local resident explained it simply. The storm doesn't care about us. We rebuild anyway. The statement reflected something we kept encountering. Humans rarely expected nature to be fair. They adapted instead. That mindset seemed woven into every part of their civilization. Far above the planet, another challenge emerged. A mining convoy arriving from a nearby system suffered a catastrophic reactor malfunction. The damaged ships drifted dangerously close to Earth orbit. Several species immediately began calculating evacuation routes. The convoy could explode. Debris might impact orbital facilities. Before anyone finished discussing the risk, human rescue teams launched. Small craft raced toward the crippled vessels. Engineers boarded unstable reactors. Tug ships secured damaged hulls. The operation lasted nearly 16 hours. When it ended, every crew member had survived. The convoy was saved. Human casualties remained remarkably low. The event became another source of misunderstanding. Many aliens assumed humans were fearless. That was not true. Every rescued engineer admitted the mission had been dangerous. They had simply gone anyway. The distinction mattered. Fearlessness was rare. Courage was a choice. The closer the unknown fleet came, the more that difference became apparent. Human military broadcasts began reaching civilian channels. Pilots recorded farewell messages for families. Crew members updated personal records. Commanders reviewed contingency plans. Nobody acted as if victory were guaranteed. They were preparing because they understood the danger. And still they stayed. Days passed. The sensor contacts continued growing. Every update seemed worse than the last. The approaching force was larger than initial estimates, much larger. Entire sectors of space behind it appeared empty. Trade routes had gone silent. Listening posts no longer responded. The pattern suggested a relentless advance. One direction, one purpose, no hesitation, no retreat. Then another development shook the system. A small reconnaissance vessel arrived from deep space. Its hull showed signs of extreme damage. The ship barely reached human-controlled territory before losing power. Emergency teams recovered the crew. Most survived. Their testimony spread rapidly among military circles. They had witnessed the unknown fleet firsthand, not in battle. Not at long range, directly. The survivors described endless formations of dark vessels stretching beyond sensor limits. They described worlds abandoned in haste. They described entire defensive lines collapsing under overwhelming pressure. Yet one detail disturbed human commanders more than anything else. The enemy had changed course. Their previous trajectory targeted nearby Union territory. Now they were heading toward Earth. No one knew why. No one knew how they had chosen the planet. But suddenly the question facing humanity was no longer whether war was coming. It was why a force capable of terrifying entire regions of space had set its sights on a single death world. And somewhere beyond the edge of the system, hidden within the advancing armada, something had already begun accelerating toward Earth ahead of the main fleet. The object separated from the main fleet 3 days before the predicted arrival. At first, sensors classified it as a scout, then a courier, then an automated probe. Each new analysis contradicted the previous one. The object accelerated continuously, crossing distances that should have required weeks in a matter of days. Human observatories redirected nearly every available sensor toward it. Military commanders monitored its approach around the clock. The rest of us waited and worried. For the first time since reaching Earth, I began seeing genuine concern among the human population. Not panic, concern. Families gathered together more often. Public broadcasts discussed emergency procedures. Supply reserves were quietly increased. Shelters were inspected. The preparations were obvious once you knew where to look. Humanity was getting ready for the worst. Yet life continued. Restaurants remained open. Schools continued teaching. Construction projects moved forward. Even as an unknown fleet advanced toward their homeworld, humans refused to stop living. That contradiction fascinated alien observers. Most civilizations shut down during major crises. Humans adapted around them. The closer the threat came, the more examples appeared. A massive hurricane formed over one of Earth's oceans during the same week the military was preparing for possible war. The storm threatened millions. Emergency teams mobilized immediately. Aircraft flew directly into dangerous weather. Rescue crews prepared evacuation routes. Engineers reinforced vulnerable infrastructure. Watching the operation unfold was almost unbelievable. Humanity was simultaneously preparing for an interstellar threat and a planetary natural disaster. Neither effort slowed the other. One of our officers finally voiced the question many of us had been asking. How do they handle so many dangers at once? A human logistics specialist answered without hesitation. We always have. That simple response stayed with me. Perhaps that was the difference between Deathworlders and everyone else. Humans had never lived in a safe environment. Danger was not an interruption, it was normal life. The mysterious object finally entered the outer defensive perimeter. Thousands of sensors locked onto it. Military fleets shifted formation, orbital weapons activated. Every civilian ship received orders to remain clear of operational zones. The object was smaller than expected. Dark, angular. Unlike any known vessel, it emitted no recognizable communications. No identification signals. No diplomatic requests, nothing. It simply continued moving toward Earth. The silence surrounding it felt unnatural. Hours passed, then something changed. The object transmitted a signal, not words, not images. A mathematical pattern repeated across every frequency band. Scientists from dozens of species rushed to analyze it. Human experts worked alongside alien researchers in crowded command centers. The entire system waited for answers. The pattern appeared intentional, structured, complex, yet nobody could determine its purpose. Warning, challenge, navigation marker, command sequence. Every theory remained possible. As uncertainty grew, another development shocked the observers watching Earth. Human civilians began volunteering. Not for combat, for support. Medical services expanded. Transportation networks reorganized. Manufacturing facilities increased production. Entire communities coordinated relief efforts for military families. The scale was staggering. Nobody ordered them to do it. They simply did it. One alien diplomat watching the broadcasts summarized the reaction perfectly. I thought human strength came from their soldiers. After several seconds, he corrected himself. No, it comes from everyone. The statement spread rapidly through communication networks. More and more outsiders were beginning to understand. Human military power was impressive. Human technology was improving rapidly. But neither explained what we were witnessing. The true strength of humanity seemed to be cooperation under pressure. The harder circumstances became, the closer they worked together. As the unknown object approached Earth orbit, military intelligence finally released limited information gathered from the damaged reconnaissance vessel. The enemy had advanced across multiple regions of space without negotiation, without demands, without apparent interest in diplomacy. Entire systems had fled before them. Others simply disappeared from communication networks. The reports offered little comfort. If anything, they deepened the mystery. What kind of civilization crossed the stars while remaining almost completely silent? What kind of force inspired fear on such a scale? Those questions echoed throughout every fleet in the system. Then came the moment that changed everything. The approaching object finally entered visual range. Images appeared across command centers, civilian broadcasts, and observation decks. The room around me fell silent. The vessel looked ancient, scarred, covered in markings no translator could identify. Yet it was not the ship itself that captured everyone's attention. It was what the vessel carried. Attached to its outer hull were fragments of ships. Thousands of fragments, pieces of vessels from countless species. Some were recognizable, many were not. The sight transformed uncertainty into something much worse. The unknown fleet was not approaching untouched regions of space. It had already crossed civilizations, many civilizations. And now it was here. Across Earth orbit, human commanders studied the images without speaking. Alien observers waited nervously for their reaction. Finally, a senior human officer broke the silence. His voice remained calm, steady, focused. Begin Phase 1. Immediately, thousands of human ships started moving. Massive formations shifted into carefully prepared positions. Hidden platforms emerged from orbital shadows. Defense networks activated across the entire system. Every movement revealed layers of planning nobody outside humanity had known existed. For the first time, many of us realized an astonishing truth. The humans had not spent the last weeks preparing. They had been preparing long before we arrived. And as Earth's enormous battle fleet moved into position beneath the stars, the mysterious vessel suddenly changed course and accelerated directly toward the planet. The mysterious vessel crossed the final defensive boundary and headed straight toward Earth. Every weapon platform in the system tracked it. Thousands of human warships held position. The enormous battle fleet waited in disciplined silence. From the bridge of the far horizon, it felt as if the entire galaxy had stopped breathing. Then the vessel did something nobody expected. It slowed. The ancient ship drifted to a halt far beyond Earth's atmosphere. For several long minutes, nothing happened. No attack. No transmission, no movement. Then the mathematical signal that had puzzled scientists for days suddenly changed. Patterns became symbols. Symbols became language. Translation systems struggled to keep up. Across every screen in the system, a message slowly emerged. We seek the builders of fleets. The bridge erupted into confusion. That was not a threat. It was a question. Human commanders immediately opened communication channels. The response came from Earth itself. We are humanity. State your purpose. Several tense minutes passed. Then another message appeared. We follow the test. The phrase meant nothing to anyone. Yet it was only the beginning. Data flooded through the communication network. Historical records, star maps, images, information spanning thousands of years. Human analysts and alien researchers worked together around the clock. The truth emerged piece by piece. The unknown fleet was not an invasion force. It was an ancient civilization conducting a search. Long ago, their species had nearly vanished after a catastrophic collapse. To survive, they created automated fleets that traveled the galaxy seeking civilizations capable of enduring extreme hardship and cooperating under pressure. Most societies failed the evaluation. Some collapsed when faced with disaster. Others abandoned neighboring worlds. Many fractured into conflict when resources became scarce. The fleets moved on. Humanity had drawn their attention because Earth was different. A death world species had survived countless natural dangers while continuing to help others. Even more surprising, humanity had repaired and upgraded foreign vessels while preparing for a potential war. The ancient observers had been watching. Everything mattered: the rescue operations, the disaster responses, the support offered to strangers, the willingness to stand together despite uncertainty. What humanity saw as ordinary behavior appeared extraordinary to outsiders. The fragments attached to the scout vessel were not trophies. They were historical records from civilizations encountered across millennia. The silent armada approaching Earth carried libraries, archives, and observers. Not conquerors, witnesses. Relief swept through the system, yet one important question remained. Why approach with such overwhelming numbers? The answer arrived directly from the ancient fleet. Because danger still existed. Far beyond known space, regions of instability continued expanding. Entire sectors faced environmental collapse, stellar disasters, and threats no single civilization could solve alone. The ancient species had spent centuries searching for partners strong enough to face those challenges. For the first time in generations, they believed they had found one: humanity. The revelation spread rapidly. Across Earth, celebrations began. Across alien fleets, reactions were more complicated. Many species struggled to understand why humans had been chosen. Then the evidence became impossible to ignore. Every report from the previous weeks told the same story. When ships needed repairs, humans helped. When disasters struck, humans responded. When danger approached, humans prepared. When allies were threatened, humans stayed. The answer had been visible all along. Human strength was never just about surviving a death world. It was about what they did after surviving it. The following days transformed the entire system. Diplomatic meetings replaced military briefings. Scientists exchanged knowledge. Engineers compared technologies. Human shipyards that had prepared for war shifted toward an even larger project. Building together, the upgrades installed aboard the Far Horizon became symbolic of something greater. Humanity had not simply repaired our vessel. They had improved it because they believed things should leave better than they found them. The philosophy began spreading throughout known space. Months later, as our ship prepared to depart Earth, I stood on the observation deck looking down at the blue and white world. The same death world that had once frightened generations of explorers. The same world of storms, earthquakes, predators, and harsh environments. Yet now I understood why humans came from such a place. Earth had taught them adaptability. It had taught them endurance. It had taught them cooperation in the face of danger. Most importantly, it had taught them hope. As the Far Horizon pulled away from orbit, thousands of vessels moved around Earth. Human ships, alien ships, ancient ships, working side by side. The galaxy had expected humanity to become dangerous because they survived a death world. The truth was far more remarkable. Humans survived a death world and chose to become helpful. They built friendships where others built walls. They shared strength instead of hoarding it. They faced uncertainty without surrendering their humanity. Looking back at Earth growing smaller in the distance, I finally understood the message hidden behind every repair, every rescue, every upgrade. The greatest achievement of humanity was not that they survived one of the harshest worlds in the galaxy. It was that, after surviving it, they made the galaxy stronger too. And that was why, when the stars needed allies, everyone eventually looked toward Earth. Thanks for watching this story. If you enjoyed this HFY science fiction adventure, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more epic stories.